Good afternoon, I'm Abe.
And I'm Frank. And tonight, we're adumbrating the second half of Chapter 19, Drifting Towards Disunion, in Kennedy, Cohen, and Bailey's The American Pageant textbook. Abe, start us off.
All right. The Democratic Senator Douglas's term was about to expire in 1858. The Republicans chose Honest Abe Lincoln to run against Douglas. In early life, Lincoln was predominantly self-educated and soon became one of the well-known trial lawyers in Illinois. However, the Kansas-Nebraska Act incited Lincoln, and he became one of the most active politicians and orators in the Northwest. But Frank, people at our school do LD debate. Could you tell me what that is?
Absolutely. LD debate stands for Lincoln-Douglas debate, and it originated when Lincoln, perhaps foolishly, challenged Senator Douglas to a series of 7 public debates, thus sparking the creation of Lincoln-Douglas debate. Lincoln challenged Douglas over the Dred Scott controversy in the famous Freeport question, which Douglas answered through a quite evasive and inflammatory of the South Freeport doctrine, in which he stated that slavery would only exist if there were laws to protect it. Now, in the end, Douglas won the Illinois race for Senate, but Lincoln won the popular vote, giving him a moral victory. And in the long run, Douglas shot himself in the foot with his Freeport doctrine because he angered the South so much, since he was basically saying that slavery would dissolve if it didn't have popular backing, whereas the South had wanted him to say that it would always exist in the states which had ordained its legality. Abe, earlier you mentioned John Brown. Now, just like the Avengers, can we expect him to have a part 2?
Surprisingly, yes. As if John Brown's hacking incident earlier wasn't crazy enough, he launched a scheme to invade the South, provoke a slave rebellion, and create a free black state. So at Harpers Ferry, he captured the federal arsenal, but the slaves failed to rise in revolt. Brown was thus quickly captured and convicted of treason and murder, despite his numerous pleas of insanity. But Brown realized that he was worth most to the abolitionist cause as a martyr, so he displayed dignity and courage during his trial. Brown's legendary last words were, "This is a beautiful country." So what were the effects of Harper's Ferry? Southerners saw Brown as a murderer and were further incited to secede. Moderate Northerners, like the Southerners, denounced Brown's feat. And third, abolitionists and free soilers, on the other hand, were angered by Brown's execution, since many were ignorant about his past deeds. But Frank, what was going on with the Democratic Party at this time?
Well, the Democrats at this time were becoming more and more divided, a result of their multifaceted stance on slavery. Eventually, the Northern Democrats chose Stephen Douglas for president, and the Southern Democrats nominated John C. Breckinridge. Simultaneously, the Constitutional Union Party was formed in Tennessee, and they nominated John Bell. In reality, they were just another version of the good old Know-Nothing Party. Keeping it simple, their exciting slogan was the Constitution and the enforcement of laws. Abe, can you tell me about the election of 1860?
Gladly. For the 1860 election, the Republicans nominated Abe Lincoln over higher law William Seward, since Seward lost much of his support through his radical, irrepressible conflict speech. Republican policies appealed to almost all non-Southern groups. For example, there was non-extension of slavery for free soilers, a promise of full rights for immigrants, and free homesteads for farmers. Abe Lincoln, surprisingly, was not a complete abolitionist. He favored paying cash compensations to the slave owners that had to free their slaves. And Lincoln eventually won out in the 1860 election over Stephen Douglas, who proclaimed he would murder the first secessionist. But Frank, could you tell me more about the 1860 election?
Absolutely. So Lincoln won the presidency with a mere 40% of the popular vote, and wasn't even on the ballot in 10 of the southern states. The election of 1860 was, perhaps unsurprisingly, the most sectional on record, with the North entirely voting for Lincoln, the South entirely voting for Breckinridge, and the middle voting for Bell. Despite Lincoln winning the Oval Office, the South still had a healthy amount of political power, including a majority on the Supreme Court and enough congressional seats to strike down any federal amendments, including ones that would target the revision and eventually the destruction of the institution of slavery. However, the South, in its infinite wisdom, decided to secede anyway. So Abe, now that we've seen that the South was destined to succeed, how did that secession go about manifesting itself?
Okay. South Carolina set off a chain reaction of secession when it seceded 4 days after Lincoln's 1860 election. 6 other states followed South Carolina during the following 6 weeks. The total of the 7 states established the Confederate States of America and elected Jefferson Davis as their president. The crisis further deepened because of Lincoln's lame duck interlude, in which he was forbidden to take office for 4 months after being elected. Lincoln's absence allowed for the southern states to more easily secede, and President Buchanan is therefore blamed for not forcefully retaining the seceders in the Union. So why didn't Buchanan forcefully stop the seceding states? 1. Buchanan claimed he couldn't find authority in the Constitution to stop the secessionists with guns. 2. The small army that the Union did have was widely scattered and was needed to supervise the Indians in the western territories. And 3. Public opinion in the North did not yet accept violence. Lincoln, ironically, continued this wait-and-see policy of Buchanan when he was first elected. But Frank, could you tell me, were there any last-minute attempts at compromise?
There certainly were. The impending bloodshed of the Civil War led to the last-minute Crittenden Amendments, which were meant to appease the South. They proposed federal protection for slavery south of the 36th parallel for all states and potential future territories, including lands such as Cuba. Lincoln blocked them because he rightly feared that they might lead to permanent slavery in the South. Thus, the North and South broke apart and began the gradual slide towards war. Abe, plain and simple, can you just run through the reasons really quickly for us why the South wanted to secede?
Yes. Southern states seceded for several reasons. 1. They were agitated by the shift in political balance against them. 2. They were displeased with the triumph of the sectional Republican Party. 3. They were tired of criticism from the abolitionists and free soilers, and they despised the Northern interference, that is, Brown's raid and the Underground Railroad. 4. They believed the North wouldn't oppose their departure, since Northern manufacturers were dependent on Southern markets and cotton. 5. Southern states liked the idea of an independent economy, that is, their own banking system, unrestrained trade with Europe, and no tariffs. 6. Nationalism fermented in the South, and with it came individualism and rejection of being dominated by the North. And 7. Southerners embodied the idea of self-determination, in which they could voluntarily decide to withdraw from the Union. The South was confident that it could achieve its own peculiar destiny more happily and prosperously with secession.
So, overall, Chapter 19 serves to enumerate the several factors that both made the North more and more pitted against slavery and pushed the South closer and closer towards secession. Now, these factors include, first, literature, which we saw in Uncle Tom's Cabin and the impending crisis of the South. Second, the conflict over Kansas with the Lecompton Constitution and Bleeding Kansas. Third, the division of the Democratic Party. Fourth, Dred Scott versus Stanford decision. Fifth, the Freeport Doctrine. Sixth, the Harpers Ferry conflict. And seventh, and finally, the final straw, the election of Abraham Lincoln, an opponent to slavery.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe
and comment down below if you have any questions.
We'll catch you guys next time.